Hello my friends, we're back with our reading of the Spirit's book. We are at the topic earthly sympathies and antipathies. And for sympathies, he refers to the footnotes that he already explained on questions 211, 213 for definitions of sympathy and antipathetic. Sympathy and is sympathetic in this context. Okay, so we are at question 386. Could two individuals who have already known and loved each other meet in another corporeal existence and recognize each other? That's a good question. And what's the answer? Recognize each other? No. Feel attracted to each other? Yes. Frequently, intimate connections founded on sincere affection arise from no other cause. Two individuals are drawn together by apparently fortuitous circumstances, but it is actually the result of the attraction of two spirits who have been searching for each other amidst the crowds. Question that follows this answer. Wouldn't they find great pleasure in being able to recognize each other? Answer. Not always. The memory of past lives might hold greater disadvantages than you suppose. After death, they will recognize each other and will remember the time they spent together. Question 387. Is sympathy always the result of their having known each other previously? Answer. No, two spirits who have affinities naturally search for each other without their having been previously acquainted as incarnates. Question 388. Wouldn't the encounters which sometimes occur between certain persons and which are attributed to chance be the effect of a kind of sympathetic relationship? Answer. Among thinking beings, there are connections that you do not yet know anything about. Magnetism is at the core of this science, which you will later comprehend better. Question 389. Where does the instinctive repulsion come from when certain individuals meet each other for the first time? Answer. They are antipathetic spirits who perceive and recognize each other without ever having spoken to each other. Question 390. Is instinctive antipathy always a sign of an evil nature? Answer. Two spirits are not necessarily evil just because they are not sympathetic. Antipathy may originate from a dissimilarity in their way of thinking. As they evolve, however, these shades of dissimilarity are erased and the antipathy disappears. Question 391. Does the antipathy between two individuals arise first in the one whose spirit is worse, or in the other whose spirit is better? Answer. It arises in both, but the causes and effects are different. An evil spirit feels antipathy towards anyone who may be able to judge and unmask it. Upon seeing a person for the first time, it perceives that that person will disapprove of it. Its dislike then changes into hatred and envy, which inspire it with the desire to do evil. The good spirit, on the other hand, is repulsed by the evil one because it knows it will not be understood by the other and that neither shares the same sentiments. However, Aware of its higher moral principles, it feels neither hatred nor jealousy toward the other. It is content to simply avoid and pity it. Now we are at the next topic, which is forgetfulness of the past. And the question is 392. Why does the incarnate spirit lose the memory of its past? Answer. Human beings cannot and must not know everything. God, out of divine wisdom, wills it to be this way. Without the veil that hides certain things from them, they would be dazzled, like one who passes suddenly from the darkness into light. By forgetting their past, they are more fully themselves in the present. Question 393. How can individuals be responsible for their deeds and redeem their wrongs if they cannot remember them? How can they profit from the experience acquired in lives that have fallen into forgetfulness? Forgetfulness, yes. We could understand that life's tribulations might be a lesson for them if they could remember what had caused them in the first place. But since they do not remember them at all, each existence is as if it were the first, and it is thus that they are always having to start over. How can this be reconciled with the justice of God? Just a second. Answer. With each new existence, spirits gain more intelligence and can better distinguish between God and evil. Where would their merit be if they remembered their entire past? When spirits enter their life of origin, the spirit life, their entire previous life unfolds before them. They see the wrongs they committed and which are the cause of their suffering, as well as what would have kept them from committing them in the first place. They understand the justice of the position assigned to them, and they thus desire a new existence that can redeem the one that has elapsed. They seek trials similar to those they have already experienced, or struggles they believe will be appropriate for their advancement. They ask spirits who are of a higher order to help them in the new task that they are about to undertake, for they know that the spirit who will be given to them as their guide in that new existence will endeavor to enable them to repair their wrongs of the past by giving them a sort of intuition about them. The same intuition is the thought, the wrongful desire, which frequently assaults you and which you instinctively resist, most of the time attributing your resistance to the principles you have received from your parents. However, it is the voice of conscience speaking to you, and this voice is a memory of the past, a voice that warns you not to fall into the errors you committed previously. In that new existence, if a spirit endures its trials with courage and resists them, it evolves and will ascend in the spirit's hierarchy when it returns to be among them. And then there is a note from Kardec saying the following: if during our corporeal life we do not have a precise memory of what we were and of what God or evil, and of what good or evil we did in our previous lifetimes, we nevertheless have an intuition of them. Hence, our instinctive tendencies are a reminiscence of our past, about which our conscience, which represents the desire we have conceived to no longer commit the same wrongs, warn us that we must resist. Question 394. On worlds more advanced than ours, where beings are not subject to all our physical needs and infirmities, Do they understand that they are happier than we are? Happiness, in general, is relative. We feel it by comparing it with a less happy state. In some of those worlds, though better than ours, have not yet reached the state of perfection, and their inhabitants must have their own annoyances. Even though the wealthy among us do not suffer the anxieties of material needs like the poor, they are no less subject to the same types of tribulations that embitter their lives. Thus, I would ask whether the inhabitants of those worlds in their own situations feel as unhappy as we do, and whether they also complain about their fate, since they do not have the memory of a less evolved existence for comparison. Answer. Two different answers apply to this question. There are worlds among those you are speaking about, on which the inhabitants have a clear and exact memory of their past lives. You should understand that these can and do know how to appreciate the happiness that God permits them to enjoy. However, there are other worlds whose inhabitants, situated, as you say, in better conditions than yours, are no less subject to great annoyances and even misfortunes. They do not appreciate their happiness because they do not remember an even unhappier state. Nevertheless, if they do not appreciate it as incarnates, they will as spirits. Note from Kardec on this one. In the forgetfulness of past existences, especially when they were painful, is there not something providential where the divine wisdom is revealed? It is on the more highly evolved worlds, when the memory of unhappy lives is nothing more than a bad dream, that the memory of such lives resurfaces. On less evolved worlds, however, would present misfortunes not be increased by the memory of everything that had been endured in the past? Therefore, we conclude that everything that God has made is well made, and that it is not our place to criticize the divine works and say how God ought to have regulated the universe. The remembrance of our former personalities would entail serious inconveniences. In certain cases, it could cause us a great deal of humiliation. In others, it could exalt our pride and so hinder our free will. God has given us just what is necessary and sufficient for us to improve ourselves. The voice of conscience and our instinctive tendencies keeping us from what could harm us. We would further add that if we had the remembrance of our own former personal acts, we would also be able to remember those of other people, and such knowledge could have the most unpleasant effects on our social relationships. Since we do not always have a good reason for being proud of our past, it is almost always a blessing for a veil to have been thrown over it. This concurs perfectly with the doctrine of the spirits regarding worlds that are more evolved than ours. On those worlds where nothing reigns except the good, there is nothing painful about remembering the past. That is why previous lifetimes are frequently remembered as easily as we remember what we did yesterday. As for the sojourn that one may have had on less evolved worlds, the memory of it is nothing more than a bad dream, as we have stated. Question 395. Can we obtain any revelations about our former lives? Answer. Not always. Nevertheless, many know who they were and what they did. If they were permitted to speak openly, they would make curious revelations about the past. Question 396. Some persons believe they have a vague memory of an unknown past. It appears as a fleeting image of a dream, which in vain they try to retain. Wouldn't this belief simply be an illusion? Answer. It is sometimes real, but much more often it is an illusion to be guarded against. It could simply be the effect of an overexcited imagination. Question 397. In corporeal existences of a more evolved nature than ours, is the memory of previous lives more precise? Answer. Yes, as the body becomes less material, they become easier to remember. The memory of the past is clearer for those who inhabit worlds of a higher order. Question 398. Since people's instinctive tendencies are a reminiscence of their past, then by studying those tendencies, can they know about the wrongs they committed? Answer. Undoubtedly. To a certain point, however, it is necessary to take into account the improvement that may have taken place in the spirit and the resolutions it made in its errant state. The present existence could, in fact, be much better than the preceding one. Question that follows this answer. Could it be worse? In other words, could persons commit wrongs in their present existence, which they had not committed in the preceding one? Answer. That depends on their advancement. If they do not yet know how to resist trials, they could be drawn to commit new wrongs as a consequence of the position they themselves have chosen. But such wrongs indicate a stationary state rather than a regressive one, because spirits may advance or remain stationary. They do not regress. Question 399. Since the tribulations of corporeal life are at the same time expiations for past wrongs and trials for the future, does it follow that from the nature of these tribulations we may deduce the kind of preceding existence we lived? Answer. Very frequently, because individuals are punished for their particular sins. Nevertheless, we cannot make this an absolute rule. The instinctive tendencies are a more certain indication, because the trials that a spirit undergoes refer as much to the future as to the past. And then there's a note from Kardec on this answer saying, when the end that Providence has marked for their errant life has arrived, spirits choose for themselves the trials to which they desire to submit themselves, and which will hasten their advancement. That is the kind of existence they believe most appropriate for furnishing them with the means to evolve, and such trials are always related to the wrongs they must expiate. If they triumph over them, they advance. If they succumb, they have to start over. Spirits always enjoy their free will. It is in virtue of this freedom that in the spirit state they choose the trials of their upcoming corporeal life, and in the incarnate state they deliberate over what they will or will not do, choosing between good and evil. Denying humans their free will would reduce them to the condition of a machine. Integrated into corporeal life, spirits momentarily lose the remembrance of their former lives as though a veil hid them. Nevertheless, they sometimes have a vague awareness of them, and they may even be revealed under certain circumstances. However, this does not happen except by the will of the high-order spirits, who may allow it to occur spontaneously for some useful purpose, but never to satisfy vain curiosity. Of course, future existences cannot be revealed in any case, since they depend both on the manner in which the present existence is completed and the later choice of the spirit. Forgetfulness of wrongs that were committed is not an obstacle to spirits' improvement, because even though they do not have a precise memory of them, the knowledge they had of them during the errant state, in addition to the desire they conceived at that time to repair them, guide them through their intuition and inspire them with the thought of resisting evil. This thought is the voice of conscience, and it is seconded by spirits who will assist them if they heed their good suggestions. Even though people do not know the acts they committed in their previous lives, they can nonetheless always know the kind of wrongs for which they became guilty and what their dominant characteristics were. They only have to study themselves in the present, and they will be able to discern what they were in the past, not by what they are per se, but by their tendencies. The tribulations of corporeal life are, at the same time, expiations for past wrongs and trials for the future. They purify and elevate us if we endure them with resignation and without complaint. The nature of the trials and tribulations we undergo may also enlighten us about what we were and what we did, as in this world we judge the acts of a criminal by the punishment the law inflicts on him or her. Thus, those who were proud will be punished by the humiliation of a subaltern position, the self-indulgent and greedy by poverty, those who were harsh towards others by the harsh treatment they themselves will suffer, the tyrant by slavery, the bad son by ingratitude of his own children, the lazy by forced labor, and etc. Well, guys, I hope you have liked this reading as much as I did, and I'll see you next time. God bless you all. Big kids. Bye-bye.